Welcome to the Black Male Impact. Today we have as guest Dr. Marcus Chaney. Dr. Chaney, welcome to the Black Male Impact.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate the invite, and it's a pleasure being here this evening.
Man, it's a pleasure having you here as we're going to be talking about socialization and how, that help to us to think about ourselves and what we think is possible for us. But before we get into the conversation today, for the listeners who are here with us, I wanted to please share this conversation with your network. And for those who are here for the first time, my name is Dr. Richard Across, and I'm the founder of the Black Male Impact, where we talk with Black men on what they are doing and what we can do differently so we can move forward and help the next generation to be the best that they can be. But I will share just a little bit about Dr. Cheney before I hand over to him to share more with you. So, Dr. Cheney is currently the president of College of Health and Services and Careers. He's also a business coach, author, speaker, entrepreneur, and healthcare administrator. So, just for you to get a little bit more insight of who Dr. Cheney is, I'll just give him the floor to share more with you before we get into the conversation. The floor is yours.
Thank you again, Richard, and again, thank you for the invite. Just for the listening audience, my career has spanned really 360 degrees. Um, I started out in corporate America, working for a top 500 business. Then I went to work for a minority owned business in Washington, D.C. And I later left there and went into education, high school teacher, coach. Later on, became an administrator. And then went after 7 years, went into higher education. And from there, that's when things start turning for me professionally and realized what that call was. Worked at three different institutions of higher learning, worked at Jackson State University, really where my growth started, and went on to become vice president for student life at Jackson State. Left there, became vice president of student services at Jarvis Christian University, and then my last stint was vice president for student affairs, um, and including enrollment management and also really the campus enforcement at Lincoln University in Missouri. Retired. I call myself retiring, Richard,
Yeah.
back in 2021. But God had more things in store for me, and the thing that He did have in store for me was to continue my thrust with education and also business.
Correct.
So now, as Richard mentioned, I'm president of the College of Health Services and Careers. We have about 14 allied health programs at our college. I also serve as the president and COO of B1 Healthcare Solutions, which we actually have a home care agency, a drug and alcohol testing services that we're doing there. And also oversee the foundation where we raise monies for our students and providing scholarships through our college. So it's kind of been a full circle. It's been a great 4 years. Um, we have grown. We have made sure that we have worked tirelessly here in the state of Mississippi to ensure that we're providing the resources and the necessary tools for folks to become engaged in healthcare, which there's a shortage here in the state of Mississippi as
Correct.
far as workers are concerned. So we're heavily engaged in the workforce and ensuring that we're providing opportunity not only for the community, but also providing outlets for those hospitals, doctors' offices, clinics, and so they can hire workers for their areas.
Man, that's great work. Anything to do with community and support other people, it's always a need to make sure those gaps are filled. So people can have the right support and service that they need, especially when it comes to health. And that's one thing we cannot really neglect. If we want to experience the best of life, we need health. So therefore, we're going to need healthcare workers. But as you stated earlier, you had planned to retire, but with someone with your experience and the knowledge that you have gained, you couldn't be sitting with it to yourself. There are a lot more people that really need, what you have learned on your journey, so we can be better, going forward. As they said, sometimes the best knowledge for most of us as we take this journey is to learn from the experiences of those who start the journey before us. So again, Dr. Cheney, it's great to have you here on the Black Male Impact. And so, what we're going to do, I'm going to start off with this question. And I know you have shared some of your journey. We may touch on some of the things that you already shared. And
Sure.
so, but let's kick off the conversation with, how has your upbringing shaped the way you view yourself and the world around you today?
Wow. I was blessed. Where I know a lot of people are not, but I was blessed. I grew up in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. I had a mother that was she was a college professor.
Wow.
My dad was a principal in the local school district. And from day one of me growing up in Pine Bluff, they emphasized education. One of the things that is different in today's environment, that's different than it was then, education was the root to be able to make yourself better. Without the education, it was always believed that especially as an African American, that you were not going to be able to achieve. And so my parents really emphasized a lot of that with me. They exposed me to a variety of things within the community. So very briefly, I'll let you know that when I was growing up in Pine Bluff, there was a number of firsts, and I'm not that old, but there were a number of firsts. I remember when going into my sophomore year, that was the first time that there was an African American valedictorian and salutatorian who both went on to Harvard. Um, I remember as a sophomore in high school, I joined Key Club, and my father had to make a phone call to the advisor because myself and three other friends were the first blacks join Key Club.
Oh, wow.
And this was in the late 70s. And so my parents want to make sure that I had a clear understanding that there was more than just a black world, but there was a entire world. And
Correct.
so they engaged me in everything from music to being able to travel. And again, I was very blessed. My parents were not making a lot of money as educators back then, but they exposed me to a lot through my church upbringings. They wanted to ensure that I was engaged. Through my school, they encouraged me to be engaged in extracurricular activities, sports. Um, then they even encouraged me to work.
Correct.
I've been working since I was 16 years old,
Wow.
and the question that came up was, I wanted to buy something. And my parents said, "Well, this is what you're limited to. If you want to get these items or these clothes, you need to get a job.
Correct.
And they said, but you have to get a job that does not interfere with your extracurricular activities, that does not interfere with anything school related. And so that's what I did. So I worked ever since I was 16. And so, thanks to my upbringing, um, I was able to have friends on both sides. I have, of course, I had black friends. I
Right.
had white friends that some of them I'm still friends with till today, and a lot of my black friends I'm still friends with today. And then the last thing with my upbringing, my parents taught me that just because you're in a situation, you treat everyone the same. And so, because of that, I have friends that some people probably would have said, with a question, but a lot of those guys are still my friends of today. But they encouraged me to do the things that I needed to do. So I was just given that opportunity in growing up in life to really um, be a little bit different, and be able to appreciate those things. My dad during the summers of college, my dad was washing windows at the country club that I actually was went to as a guest when I was in high school. My mom's mother only had a third grade education,
Wow.
and but emphasized that she would go to college and further her education. So that taught me to appreciate each and every person. It didn't make a difference what um, your color was. Didn't make a difference what your religion was. It didn't really make a difference of your
Okay.
background financially. To treat all people the same, and that's what I've been doing ever since then, and that's led me up to my entire life.
And that's great to have a foundation that help you to understand people and not to see yourself above people just because you may have more than them. And I think that is great for community building and to even serve. And I know you, within the education space, and know that you treat everyone, the same. But you said something that I believe it needs to be emphasized, even today, that education, as your parents let you know, it was the foundation or the root to make yourself better. Once we take education seriously, despite where we are on our journey, despite our background, it can really make things better. And it doesn't matter how much you accomplish, because I've seen multimillionaire in colleges going back to get education. So that means education is valuable. So it's not just for those who don't have anything, because even those who do have realize how important education is. And so that's great. And I just want to go on to the next question that I have. What societal expectations have you felt pressured by, and how have you overcome them? I know that you have a different path than for some of your friends, but what societal expectations have you felt pressured by as a black male growing up in Mississippi, and how have you overcome them?
Um, hmm, I think the expectations for me were more family pressure, um, and I didn't understand that growing up. I was the baby grandchild. Um, all of my I was an only child to my parents. Um, all of my first cousins were 18 years or older. My father was the youngest. Um, and so I think not understanding then, like I understand now, I think expectations were put on me just because of who I was, and last name was in Pine Bluff. My grandfather, Reuben Chaney, was a civil rights icon in the state. He was major when it came to education. One of the largest black high schools he was principal of, and so the expectation was there um, that I would go ahead and achieve those things. But I took my time to get where I needed to get. I did not go a lot of people don't understand that. I did not go the traditional route.
Okay.
I made life a little bit difficult. And when I first went to school, I decided I was going to be rebellious and drop out.
Wow.
And when I dropped out of school, my parents thought I was crazy and the whole 9 yards. And so, I worked and I did all of those things for 10 years.
Wow.
And I went back to school at the age of 30
Wow.
and I finished my undergraduate degree. And from there, it just like it was a light bulb. It was like, I know it's a little bit older, but at the age of 30, I realized what I was supposed to be doing, what I had been trained to do. And the biggest thing is how I can help others accomplish those things. And God put me into a great situation for 7 years, little school district in the Delta of Arkansas, Helena, West Helena, Arkansas. People thought I was crazy to take a position there. But coming out of that situation, I realized what my true calling was. My true calling was to help young folk be able to take advantage of opportunities they might not even know about.
Correct.
And I say that I started helping young athletes be able to help them with their ACT scores to make sure that they could get into colleges and universities and get scholarships. Began to work with other people in the area to really groom academic students that were high academe, but basically felt there was nowhere to go. So I began to do that in Helena, West Helena School District, and that continued there to Jackson State. And I realized while I was at J State that I wanted to focus my attentions on historically black colleges and universities. I felt that there was a dire need of uplifting our young men, our young women, and to show them they were better than what maybe they had been told
Correct.
from high school all the way through. And that led me to Jarvis. Jarvis Christian University is an open enrollment campus. A number of their students are recruited from the inner city of Dallas, inner city of Fort Worth, inner city of Houston. A lot of them had been told that they would never make it. And to be able to work with them and see the number of achievements that they made, and at the end, walking across a stage which you were told
Correct.
that you would never be able to do that. And that same thing continued at Lincoln, where again, an open enrollment university campus, where a number of students that came from inner city St. Louis, as you know,
Yeah.
inner city Kansas City, inner city Chicago, and kind of like had just been thrown out there. And one of the things that I did was to make sure and try to make sure that these students had an opportunity. And I guess you never realized if you made an impact or not until you see them 15, 20, 25 years later, and they're telling you, thank you for what you did. I
Correct.
appreciate you for supporting me. I appreciate you for writing that letter to help me get into graduate school. I appreciate this. I appreciate that. And I guess you never know the impact that you made until
Correct.
then. So, when you talk about leaving a legacy, you talk about your upbringing. I didn't have the opportunity to stay in my grandfather's life that long, but I've been told I am the epitome to Reuben Chaney, my grandfather, who was a advocate of education, advocate of social rights, an advocate of community, believed that everyone should be able to stand on their own and do the things they need to do. So I guess if you say that, to answer your question,
Yeah.
I guess you would say that yes, that was the legacy that was set forth.
Yeah, and just to go back to what you said earlier, that you did really value the family pressure, the expectation they have of you, and you rebel. Because we have young people today
They
who,
rebel.
oh yes, just to get away from the expectations, have the potential to do great, but they want to do their own thing. But you going through that process, can really help these young people to understand that you don't have to take that route. These are the things that have experienced. These are the mistakes that I've made in that period. Because some kids don't realize that, yes, their parents have their best interests at heart. They're not pressuring them to do better just because they want to pressure them, but sometimes parents see what young people don't. And even as adults, we see what young people sometimes don't. So having that expectation of them. But I want to ask you, when you reached 30, did you go back in your mind and say, what, I'm going to hold myself to the standard my parents did hold me to?
Um, I'm not sure if I looked at it that way, but I think that I looked at it from a standpoint. Um, I missed a lot. So, for me, when I went back to school, I worked full time. I had a 40-hour week job. I was able to get a job in a facility that housed young people. But I went back and I engaged myself just like an undergraduate student. I felt that I missed out on that opportunity. And the intent when I went back, to be quite honest, was that I was going to get my degree and then I was going to go back to Washington, D.C. But all of that, again, I said God has a plan.
Correct.
And I really, engaged myself in campus life. I was able to get all of the accolades that the typical 2021, 22-year-old was getting. But then again, I had responsibilities.
Correct.
But I think that the proudest moment that I had was when I graduated, and my mom and my dad, you could see the look in their eyes, like we tried all these years and you did it finally. And
Correct.
I think that that was something that they really truly enjoyed. My dad was passed away before I got my master's,
Sorry to hear that.
he missed out on that opportunity. But my mother was able to witness my master's, and my mother was able to witness my Ph.D. So I just think that it was not really about the pressure. It was more so making a decision and making a decision that this is what I wanted to do. But I will say this, in all honesty, like I said before, my plan, my goal was to go back to DC. I worked for a great company. The anticipation was that I was going to go back working for them. But things changed in my life, and God said, "No, you're not going back to DC. We're gonna stick you. We're gonna put you in education."
Correct.
And that's where the start started. And so sometimes you have a plan that you really um,
Think is the plan.
think is the plan, right? And God has something different. Just like when I went to Jackson State, my goal was to be there till 2005. And then my plan was to go back to my undergraduate alma mater and be a college professor, just like my mama. But God had other plans, and He
Correct.
wanted me. Lord knows He wanted me. He had to want me in student affairs, and I truly enjoyed student affairs and being really heavily engaged with students and watching them achieve. And not saying that you don't do that as a professor, but you're limited
Correct.
to your students and or the school or the college in which you're teaching. But in student affairs, I had the opportunity of really being engaged with all walks of life for students.
Correct.
I guess God had that in the plan for me.
And to be the voice for those students who sometimes need someone to speak for them, because that's what some students do need, because not in all spaces they have real advocates for them, especially when they're coming from a situation where they are just so close to go back to what they're trying to escape, and
Very
not
true.
having the right person to advocate for them, to talk on their behalf, to give them a second chance, they may end up going back to the same environment they're trying to escape. So my next question to you is, how do you handle criticism while staying true to who you are?
Um, my beliefs, um, my belief in God, my belief in my family. Um, you know, as the old folks say, you know, shoot, everybody they cuss Jesus Christ. They I
That's
mean,
right.
but you gotta have some beliefs. You gotta have some ethics.
Correct.
And one of the things that I believe in, I think that a lot of times as professionals, we are faced with opportunities, and those opportunities might not be in the best interest of you personally, nor in the best interest of your family.
Correct.
And sometimes you just have to be able to know and be able to take that no and continue moving forward. So I think a lot of that is my belief in God, my me wanting to be with my family, and just really kind of that. I hate to go back, but I'll go back again. The upbringing that I was that I was able to go through, and then the other thing, to be quite honest, I think you never know when people are looking at you
Correct.
and watching you, and they if you deter yourself from anything than what they think you should be, you lose all their trust and belief, and you can't then from that point on you can't be a mentor to them. You can't assist them in anything because they won't believe everything you're saying. So
Correct.
I just think that it's all of those things combined. Without those things, you can stir to your left or stir to your right. But I think it's important to have all of those things.
Well, having that belief in self and having the foundation is important, I believe, because it doesn't matter what you do, people are going to have something to say, and we cannot take it personally when people say, as you mentioned, is to walk in that which you believe you are, because people are watching, and if we keep that in mind, because we are modeling, you know, the lifestyle, we are modeling the characteristics that we expect. So if we show up each day, knowing that someone is watching, and it's always when we least expect. So that's why it's important that we, know who we are and choose always to show up. You
I
know,
will say this. I will give you an example. I ran into a former student maybe a couple of years ago, and this particular young man had to remind me who he was. And one of the most difficult parts of the jobs that I held in student affairs was actually sending students home for disciplinary reasons.
correct,
And I ran into him at the store, and he thanked me because he said he was suspended, and and he said if I had a whole, conversation with him, going through the process of being suspended, because I just did not believe in just suspending students. I wanted to be able to explain why, and I wanted to be able to encourage them to come back to school. But anyhow, he saw me and he thanked me because he said that year that he was out of school, it helped him grow, and that the encouraging words that I said to him in encouraging him to come back stuck with him, and to the point he's a school teacher now. He
Wow.
has his master's degree. He explained all of this to me. So, again, when you talk about having those beliefs, sometimes you might have to make that crucial ultimate decision that is going to affect someone. But I believe if you make the right decision and then you encourage them to be able to come back or whatever the case might be, I think in the long run they will appreciate that decision.
Oh yeah, and sometimes they really need to refocus.
True.
And not only refocus, maybe it's just the people they are around was just not, they weren't good
Right.
for him at that
Right.
moment. And sometimes, just to refocus, really help him to get back on track and just help people on the whole to get back on track. But my next question to you, and I know you talk about, the earlier part, and you have seen the examples with your parents and your grandparents. So in what ways as socialization influenced how you approach adversity?
Hmm. Um, in this day and time, I think I approach adversity a little bit different. And again, I think it has a lot to do with um, my age, more so in my experiences. Um, I think the way our world is of today, um, a lot of young folks don't realize um, the importance of so many different things. I don't think they did not live the civil rights era. A lot of them say, well, that was back then. But as we see of today, there are people who are trying to turn us back into what was during the civil rights. Um, I was 6 when Martin Luther King passed or was killed. I remember vividly the fact that I had to stay at the house because there were riots in Pine Bluff. Um, I remember when my mother had to use for me to go to the pediatrician, couldn't go through the front entrance. We had to go through the back entrance. I remember when um, um, in high school, there was a country club in Pine Bluff that did not admit blacks, and I was invited there, and my parents had to make sure they realized that I was a young black boy, and to make sure there were not any issues. Um, I remember when in elementary school, a teacher was pulled to the side by the school board because she was producing a play, and that play had every black kid playing slaves and all of this.
Wow.
So for me, the where we are now is where a lot of people have never seen or never been. And so for me, I don't understand in 2025 while we're even dealing with and talking about separation and all of these things. But I do understand that, we're in a climate of today that's different. We're in a climate of today that was once was. And I think it's important that our young people realize um, they have a power. And I said all of that. They have a power. And I don't think they realize how powerful they really are. Um, People died to make sure that the young folk of the day, the old folk of the day, had the right to vote.
Correct.
And no matter what you say and how you say it, if we voted, a lot of things would not be like they are today. And so we cannot say, well, our vote does not count. But in reality, the number of African Americans that live in this country, the number of African Americans that spend the dollars and cents they spend on goods, we have power. We just don't utilize our power. And I think that is the saddest thing is that the power that we have, we really just don't utilize it. We have so many opportunities, but I've watched the polls, and it's amazing seeing the number of African Americans that don't vote, but then the number of African Americans that are affected by the policies that come out, that their vote could have avoided all of that. And so, when I look at socialization and where we are now, we have the power. It's just about us taking advantage and stop making excuses of that. And I know people hate to talk about the civil rights, but man, those folks fought hard to
Correct.
make sure at this point in time in 2025, we should have no issues. And um, that is, I'm hoping that one day we wake up and realize the power that we actually really have. And when you realize that, I think we'll be a much better place and a better country, to be
Correct.
quite honest.
Man, I do agree with you, especially when it comes to our power. It's just for us to realize it, not just in numbers, but also, especially as you mentioned, the spending power that we have, because money speaks loud. But if we use it in the right way, and the next thing, as you talk about us realizing our power, we have to realize that we have to support each other as we continue on this journey. Because it's one thing to be great, but if we're not using it to build each other up, it's going to still be a challenge. And when it comes to adversity, doing the work by yourself, it may feels good, but the adversity sometimes will make you feel discouraged if you're doing it by yourself, and that's where it's important that we come together and realize our power. And despite what's happening, we can change that. But as you mentioned, I don't think we do realize, our power in dealing with the challenges that we do face today. Because yes, we should be far ahead of where we are today with some of the things that we do experience as Black people in society today. We shouldn't have to deal with some of the things, but we have to make sure we play our part. And as you mentioned, that we need to vote, we need to show up, and we need to support what is going to help to move the needle forward. But my next question, sorry, to you: how do you think the social environment impacts our mental health
Hmm.
and self worth as Black men?
Wow. Um, I'm gonna use one word. Um, I think a lot of black men feel disrespected. Um, I say that because I just want you to kind of follow this. Unfortunately, most black men are raised in an environment that's just a mother,
Mhm.
a large percentage. And then they leave the home life They go into the schools. The majority of their school teachers, especially on the elementary level, are women.
Correct.
They probably see their first male teacher 9 times out of 10 in middle school and high school. If they're not an athlete, they kind of get sometimes get left out there. And they are faced with, when I say disrespect, they don't understand what a man should be or what a man should be like.
Correct.
Um, their examples have not been good. Um, it used to be the old saying was a village raised a child up, but in reality, our village has changed.
Yeah.
Can't say the same thing anymore.
No.
You have very young parents. You have very young grandparents. You don't have the same relationships that you had from a neighborhood. Um, so where you say where do they learn? Where do they learn to be a man? Um, and a lot of times they learn to be a man, unfortunately, on the streets
Oh
or
yeah.
from older family members that might not be giving them the wise decisions. Sometimes it's good, but a lot of times it's bad. And when you still look at the prison population and the number of African American men in prison, it's startling.
Uh,
Um,
it, it,
and
it-
when you look at the fact that the return rate of African American men going back to prison is even more ridiculous. So I just think that our young brothers, when I look at here in Jackson, the crimes that are committed are drug related. The shootings and the killings that are committed are done by 13
wow.
to 16-year-old black males, and they're shooting other black males 13 to 16. It's crazy. And so, you say, what can you do? How can you impact, um, a kid like that? And I don't even call him a kid, a young man like that.
Yeah.
And yes, there are organizations that are out there. I'm a member of 100 Black Men, but you're only getting a few,
Correct.
but the large amounts are taking over. And these young guys, they don't have the same feelings.
No.
Uh, their beliefs are different, and so it's a scary thought. But if you sit down and you listen to them, they will tell you the story I just said. They grew up around women. Their school teachers were women.
Mhm.
And when I say disrespected, a lot of times they are totally disrespected by the way they look, by
Mhm.
the way they act. But who's helped them in training them to be somebody better than who they are? Or who's assisted them in saying, "Hey, man, let me do this, let me do that." Yes, there are a few organizations that 100 Black Men, the fraternities, including my very own. We have a young men's group. Kappas have a young men's group, but that's just a small number. And in today's society, I really worry about our young brothers. And when I talk to people who work in the prison system, and the number of young brothers under the age of 18
Wow.
that are in prison population, man, it's crazy. And they are there for not just small crimes. They're there for murder, aggravated assault, robbery, kidnapping. The list can just go on and on and on. So it's I know I kind of got off the subject, but it's really crucial that we have to reach young people when they're young.
Yeah,
We can't wait till their first, second, and third grade. I'm just being honest.
I know, but
Yeah,
and not to really cut you off, you really touch on a subject that really needs to be unpacked, especially with some of the things that our young people are doing. As you said, we can't wait until they reach, middle school or high school to
oh,
start
it's too late. It's too late.
implementing the principles, the mindset, the perspective of life on them, because they may have already been conditioned, who they want to be or what they want to do or who they're going to be like. And if they are exposed to, especially with social media, with all um, the behaviors that they may get exposed to. And if they're in a community that's all they see, they will. And especially when it comes to self-worth, they may not believe they're worth anything. They may not believe, because even in college, I know I was talking to a young man in college, and even a young lady, and they still didn't believe. Even though they were there, they were going straight back to the mindset that they have cultivated. One of the young ladies, she was from Kansas. She said, what we do out there. And I said, that's what you want to go back to. Say, I don't care if I end up back there. That's what happened. So it's, as you mentioned, it's really important that we get to those young people. And as you mentioned, if they don't believe in who they are, and that's where the challenge comes in. So it's important that we display what we want them to be, and don't get tired of doing it, because sometimes I think when we're in these positions or in these seats, we may not think we are having an impact. But as you mentioned earlier in the conversation, people are watching. So we cannot get tired of displaying the characteristics that we believe will be beneficial to those who see us. We may not save the world, but we may end up saving one person.
Very true. Very true. And I think that one of the things that, and I don't know, I've talked to a lot of guys, and I was involved in a session early part of the year, and I listened to young brothers who have experience. And I think a lot of times those are the type of people that we need speaking to these young brothers, those that were in the same neighborhoods, those who experienced so many different things, but they've been able to turn their lives around. And I think if you can kind of be impactful in bringing those type of people as role models for those young men, I think that is one possibility. The other possibility is that our schools need to do a better job in teaching our kids. Our kids are not. They don't. Our kids. Their mind. They can't stay seated for 35, 40 minutes. So I think that if you find teachers who can be creative, that can really truly enjoy what they're doing, especially on the elementary level and the middle school level, I think that a lot of those teachers can pull things out. One of the sad parts about our education system now is that uh, people are not in it for the love of education. And I'm not going to say everybody, but some people are not in it for the love of education. They're in it to get a check.
Correct.
And those are the kind of people that you cannot have teaching these young, especially these young African American males. They need to be around people who understand who they are
Correct.
and can inspire them and motivate them, and use different learning techniques to ensure that they're gathering the information and they truly understand. But if you're sitting behind a desk and trying to teach, it ain't gonna work. So I just think that unfortunately, our education system is different. But I just think we need to employ more people in education that really truly want to be there and really want to make a difference.
Yeah, I support that 100%. Because to make the connection, that's what's going to make the difference. If you cannot
That's so
connect with the
true.
students, you're not going to help them to be all that they can be, or even to believe in who they are. And that's important. If they're going to do well, it's important that they believe in themselves. So, my next question to you, and is just back to your experience again, and just to help, people today. What experiences in your social environment impacts? No, that. Let me go back to the question. What experience in your childhood do you feel mold your confidence and resilience today?
Um,
Did you see it, or is it because of what you do?
I think a lot of it had to do with um, really that I talked about it earlier. Being engaged, of course, it was junior high then, but being engaged in junior high and high school, in extracurricular activities, being encouraged to be in leadership roles, not only within the school itself, but outside of the school, being engaged in church activities. Grew up as an AME, and so I was a YPDer. I think all of that just gave me the confidence um, to really move on and do the things that I needed to do. Be quite honest with you, the jobs that I had when I dropped out of school until I came back to school were all professional jobs. And I know that it's I was in sales, and God gave me the gift to gab. But I think that showing that confidence that I had had all the way from junior high, high school, and in the short years of college, I think it's just something that just went on further in my life. And the same thing after I graduated, and worked for the school district, and then on to the universities. I think all of that was something that was placed in my life at a very young age. Of course, then I didn't know who I was going to be and what I was going to be, but I think that just that involvement, my parents believed in you staying busy. And, even though I might didn't like this or didn't like that, they said, hey, you're going to do this. You're going to stay engaged. You're going to stay involved. And that's what I did. And it just really, I gained confidence from all of it. And now, I've had opportunities of being able to speak in so many different lights. And so I think that upbringing is something that it just becomes natural. And I look at my kids. Man, I got a son that can just sell almost anything in this world. But he has a natural. He's natural about everything that he does, and he knows he believes in researching. He has that charming look, and so his confidence was built when he was in high school. So I just think that, I watched my middle son, same thing. I watched him, I watched him in high school at an event, and I was amazed how he was able to communicate with these big wigs from AT&T, and he was only 16 years old. So again, I think it's just the how you're taught, and how you're put in front of people, and you just gain that confidence that way.
I think, just for everyone, we have to practice and keep engaging in those things that we want to do, because the more we do it, the more confident we'll become. But my next question to you is, what is one stereotype about Black men that you have to actively challenged in your life?
It's amazing you say that. Um, 2025, I just left a national fraternity conference in Tampa, Florida.
Yeah.
I got, and this is crazy now, I'm not no young guy.
Yeah.
I got on the elevator with a Caucasian woman, and that woman grabbed her purse.
Oh, wow.
That's what I said too. And I just, I just looked and I'd say, I'm in a suit.
Yeah.
I'm in a suit. I'm not casually dressed. I'm in a suit. And I know this woman knew that I was an aged man, but she still grabbed her purse and brought it close to her. So you
Wow.
ask that question, the stereotype is how people stereotype all men of color. And it doesn't make a difference if they're wearing dreads, if they're how it doesn't make a difference. That was proven this past week when I got on the elevator. And I didn't know what to say. I honestly did not know what to say. I'm saying to myself now, I know because I spoke. I said, "Hello, how are you doing?" And I know I'm dressed in a suit. I'm staying. This is not Motel 6. So, but again, unfortunately, I think that the stereotype for our brothers has always been if you're tall, if even
Aggressive.
if you're dressed nice, I guess the stereotype is maybe you're behind the scenes and you're a drug dealer, as opposed to if you're in dreads, you're a drug dealer, or it's and none of those things you cannot. I promise you cannot judge anybody by the way they look. And so that is the stereotype that unfortunately we have as a race, especially for African American men. People still have a fear of African American men.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, that's what they have been conditioned to think about
that's
who we
true.
are.
That
And
is
it
true.
doesn't matter what we do, as you mentioned, being in the suit maybe should have changed that perception, but the conditioned mind, as soon as they see you, it goes back to the labels, back to the stereotypes, back to the falsifications that have been, put out there about who we are. And as you said, it's sad that
It
we
is.
can be here in this time, and that's the first thing that comes to your mind, especially as you mentioned, you're dressing professionally, you spoke at the place, so they have seen you. But again, when we see these things happen on TV, when you see a black man is treated unfairly, it's coming from a place way deeper than just what's happening in that moment. It's deep seated hate sometimes, that cause people to treat us the way they do. And it's a challenge every day as a black male to show up, and you know you don't want to show up in the stereotypes, but even though you don't, you may still be treated as the stereotype.
And it's very true. I mean, my wife and I, when our youngest was in high school, I mean, it was like we had to constantly have conversations with him. Not that he was doing anything wrong, but you know, it's crazy that you got to have a conversation with your son. And I did it with all three of my sons. Have a conversation and say, listen, you need to be careful. If XYZ happens, you need to be prepared to talk like you got sense. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. You want to make sure you take the fear. It's amazing that we still have to have those kind of conversations with our kids because they are stereotyped. They are stereotyped from the point of the vehicle that they might drive or from the standpoint of their hairstyle, and you just have to be able to teach that. But it doesn't. Not saying that it makes sense. It doesn't make sense in 2025 that you have to have those conversations, but you do. You have to have those conversations so that they understand what they might be faced with. And I look at my oldest son, very successful, lives in New York. Well, works in New York, lives in Jersey. Again, he will tell you, as successful as he is, he still has to be cognizant of who he is,
Right.
and that makes no sense in today's world, none whatsoever.
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't. And, it's a sad situation at times that, um, we have to be dealing with such um, type of activities when it comes to us. But, we have to, keep showing up, keep being the example, and, just keep doing or even reminding the young people what they may experience as they go on their journey. All right, so before we get to it is the on top of the hour, and that hour went by fast, because I look, it's already an hour into the conversation, but I have two more questions that I'm going to be asking.
Sure.
How do you see your impact shaping the next generation of Black men?
Um, I think mentoring, and I think it starts with my three sons, um, who again, all are professionals. All have taken a page, I should say, and that are doing extremely well. And then I look back at the number of uh, brothers that I have had the opportunity to mentor personally, watching them achieve the things they've needed to achieve, watching them do well in their lives, from getting PhDs to being able to be medical doctors, to being able to be beacons in their communities, and being pastors, all of those things. And I think that, um, you know, um, uh, those are the things that I think it's important. And I think that it's key to laying that impact. And so I think that's, you start at home, and then you move out. And they're young brothers that I call my sons also, because they've been close to the family, and I think that's where we move toward.
Yeah, and that's important to remind them what is possible despite the challenges that they may experience, because innately they have the ability, and despite whatever challenges we experience on our journey, we have seen a lot of Black men who have started from humble beginnings, who have ended up achieving great things, and history have proven that despite what adversities we may experience, we can achieve whatever we put our minds to. We have the evidence of engineers, innovators, and pioneers, even before they have access to all the resources that they would want to. So at times, we just have to remind the young people, especially, that despite, what we may have happening or the experiences we have, they can achieve whatever they want to achieve. So before we close out today, what advice would you give to Black boys navigating stereotypes and external expectations?
I think the one advice is, Don't let people that are negative influence you.
Okay.
Stay true to yourself. You have people out in this world that are always negatively thinking this and that without looking into their own lives. So stay focused, stay who you are, and have get that mentor that
Correct.
can assist you in what you're trying to do.
Correct.
You know, man, there are more black billionaires, millionaires than there's ever been.
Correct.
There are more black educated folks than there's ever been.
Correct.
These folks are making an impact in the world, not just in the black community, but in the world.
Correct.
And so I think that, the negative people that say the things that they say, I think that you have to just shut them down, shut them out. Um, you know, they need to look at numbers, they need to look at realization.
Correct.
Black and brown are here to stay. And no matter what the situation is, black and brown are here to stay, and black and brown are very successful.
Correct.
And so, they are the ones that are the inventors. They are the ones that are leading in the medical field. They're the ones they're here to stay.
Correct.
And I just think that that is one thing that our young brothers have to do. They can't focus on what's out there on social media. They can't focus on what they might hear or see on TV or the radio. They have to believe in themselves. And I think that social media and broadcasting kind of makes a picture
Correct.
of who we're really not. And I think that that's that's what they want you to see. But I think the biggest thing is that we have to show who we are and
Correct.
how our strengths and how strong we are and what we're capable of doing.
Well, and I appreciate that reminder, because there are always going to be negativity. There are always going to
Correct.
be people who want you to think of yourself a certain way. But despite, again, we have a lot of evidence, as you mentioned. There are more educated Black people today. There are more successful Black people today, and they're not just in the Black community. They are in all communities, and that in itself showed to us what is possible. We can all start from humble beginnings and achieve success, and we can all start from humble beginnings and make a tremendous impact in our community. So sorry. And that's a reminder, and that's something that we all have to realize, that despite what's happening around us, innately we have the ability to do more, to achieve more, and to become who we want to be, despite those challenges. So, Dr. Cheney, it was a pleasure
Yes, definitely.
talking to you today on how socialization shaped us and how we can achieve despite what we may experience.
And again, I really appreciate it, Richard. I've known you for years, and I appreciate the work that you've done in this particular space.
Correct.
I'm hoping that the new book coming out is going to emphasize more, and I think it'll be a good read for all. I don't think it just. I think sometimes everybody needs to understand um, the life and the world that we live in.
Correct.
And so, again, I look forward into reading. I know that I'm a part of, but I still look forward to hearing from the other people that are part of the book. I know this is volume number two.
Yes, sir.
So, again, I wish you much success, continued success, and I know you will do extremely well.
Oh, thank you, and that's a pleasure. And I'm just glad that you are a part of this volume, the voices of impact. And as Black men, we are making our difference. And sometimes the difference are not heard or seen by others who need to see it, to realize that they too have something of greatness within them to share with the world. And for the listeners who are here with us, I just want to say thank you. And for those who are here for the first time, also thank you. The goal of the Black Male Impact is to bring guests that we believe will share insights and perspectives that we all can utilize as we press forward on our journey. The Black Male Impact is where positive changes are inspired. Thanks again for being here with us.